witches! For those of you who don't know me, I'm Tiffany and this is my channel Bewitching.Bemused. Today we are going to talk about how to create your own spells. So please keep in mind that this is a bit more advanced work. I'm not saying that beginners can't play around with it, but you should have, at the very least, have your own basic practice down, know the foundations of your craft, and theories of magic. This is also going to be a pretty general template and based on sympathetic magic. Now, the reason I wanted to keep it very general, you guys probably already know what I'm gonna say. It's because I want you to get creative and I want you to personalize it. So I want everybody, no matter what your style of magic, your style of the craft is, what works for your practice, I want you to be able to fit it into this template on your own. So I wanted to give you some guidance without actually restricting you. I would mostly recommend this for magic practitioners who already have a very good grounding and centering practice, visualization skills, meditative and or mind-altering practices, know how to raise energy, and have done many pre-written spells on their own. Those things are pretty foundational and they are very crucial in creating your own successful spells. So if you're good to go, grab your notebook or your magic journal and let's get started. Step number one is to know what you want. This sounds easy. It really does. But I want you to keep a few things in mind. In my video with my top reasons of why spells fail, I talked about being specific without being too specific. Now, let's say, this is just an example, let's say you want to do a spell for abundance. Okay, great. Abundance of what? Cats? Stray buttons? Rain? Oh, money! You want abundance of money. Okay, great. So we went from abundance to a little bit more specific, abundance of wealth or money. Well, if you do a spell and invest now, that might pay off in, I don't know, 10 years? You might find a $100 bill on the ground in 6 months, or maybe a handful of quarters tomorrow. That's a little too vague. Now, being specific is good, but like I already said, you don't want to be too specific. So what are some examples of that? Okay, no, handful of quarters, $100 bill 6 months from now, more money 10 years from now, not gonna work for me. I want to win $1 million in the lottery, and I want that to happen sometime this month. Yes, that's very specific, but it's too specific and it's unrealistic. That would be asking for a very high dollar amount within a very short period of time. And there's only one channel through which I'm allowing the universe to get that money to me, which is the lottery. Always keep in mind that the universe wants to find the path of least resistance. So you don't want to restrict it by giving it only the one path, or it needs to be done by this super short time period. Nothing wrong with setting a general date, but a month for $1 million? I mean, come on. There's also nothing wrong with putting a general dollar amount, but $1 million in a month? Like, okay, you guys get the point. So now with not being specific enough, yes, the universe will always find the path of least resistance, but there are many paths of least resistance. So you also want to guide it. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with putting a certain dollar amount or a certain time frame, but you just need to be realistic in what you're asking for. If you already watched my video on why spells fail and you know all this, I'm so sorry to beat a dead horse, but this is pretty important information for people to have. You have to find a balance. So like I said, it seems easy to know what you want, but sometimes what we want is just sort of general. You know what? That's not always a bad thing. If you do want just kind of more money flowing into your life in general, hey, do a money jar. You know, do a lucky charm bag, do a self-empowerment jar if you just want those things in your life in general. Nothing wrong with that. I'm talking about if you need a spell for something more specific. So if you know that your want is not general, dig into the root of it. Journal about it or meditate on it. So again, you want more money. How much? For what? Maybe right now, all you really need is to pay rent for the month. Okay, then your intention is not, I have an abundance of wealth, it is I have the means to pay my rent this month. The next part of putting together what your goal is, your intention, is to place it in the present tense. Let's say your goal is to get cast in a commercial. So you write down, I want to be cast in a commercial. Well, congratulations. That is an instant spell success because your intention with your spell is to want. Keyword is want. I want to be cast in a commercial. Phrase your intention in the present tense. I have been cast in a commercial. After all, that is what you are trying to manifest, not the want of it. Consider your intention in terms of you are not pleading for something, right? You are telling the universe what is about to go down. I am going to be cast in this commercial. Not, hey, universe, I kind of want to be cast in this commercial. You know, there's so much more power in that. And things don't get confused with little phrasings of I want, I need, I this, I that. It's I have, I am, I get, I go to, you know, fill in the blank, whatever it is for you. And finally, keep your statement positive. Don't muddy up the message that you're sending out to the universe. Now, some people believe that this has to do with the laws of attraction. If you want something positive, you need to phrase your intention positively, you need to think positively. Whereas others just feel like the universe kind of doesn't understand the differences between I have this thing and I don't have this thing. There are other reasons for keeping it in the positive tense, but I've already kind of gone on with step one long enough now, so let me just say, keep it in the positive tense. If you want confidence, your intention is, I have confidence. It is not, I don't have insecurities. Step two, find your correspondences. This is by far the heftiest part of creating your own spell, so I've broken it down into 6 categories. Items, action, timing, deity or outside power source, whatever your, given higher power is, words, visualization, and miscellaneous. Like I said, this is based on sympathetic magic. So your ingredients, items, correspondences should symbolize your intention or different forces or people who can make your intention a reality. And you want to use those in an action that simulates or mimics the manifestation of your intention. Some examples of this are if you want to prevent somebody from doing harm to others, you want to spiritually bind them, you take a picture of them. That's an item that symbolizes them. You fold it up and then you literally wrap it. You bind them with string. So there's your item, the picture and the string that symbolize what you want to take place, the energies, the person that's involved, and then you are doing the physical action of binding them. If you want to draw in a new friendship or a new love interest, you might take 2 candles shaped as people. Those are your items. They symbolize you and this other person, and you slowly bring them together. That is your action, moving them together. That can be a simple one-step action like I just used as examples, or it can be a multi-step process. It sort of depends on you, your intention, and what your personal brand of magic is. So that kind of sums it up, but let's dig in a little deeper. So A, items. For more information on how to select items appropriately that correspond for you with your intention, with the people and energies involved, please watch my video on correspondences. I've linked it down below in the description box and it's up here. I am very thorough in that, so I'm not gonna beat a dead horse again in this video. I will be brief and say just use your instincts. You don't need a book of correspondences. You don't need to Google an item. Just use your gut instincts. Sure, you can use the book or the Google for a little bit of inspiration if you're feeling a little stuck, but for the most part, just trust yourself. You know what things mean, how things connect in your own mind. Again, I'm not gonna go further into it than that. Just watch the other video if you haven't yet. But yes, use your gut. B, action. everything that I said in that correspondence video I just recommended to you not only applies to ingredients, but it also applies to actions. When you assign something a meaning, you give it that power. You have decided doing this equals this outcome. Sympathetic magic is just symbolism. Therefore, the action in it is just moving poetry. Now, don't shoehorn things in just because. Make sure that the connection between the action and the desired outcome makes sense to you. But like I said, it's poetry, it's symbolic. So lighting a candle or a piece of paper could be you igniting your intention, bringing it to life. The smoke can carry it away into the universe. Or it could be the reverse. If you're working a banishing, let's say anxiety, then that piece of paper could be your anxiety. That candle could be your anxiety, and burning one of those things demolishes it, gets rid of it, banishes it. But you can also keep this symbolism in your actions more straightforward, like in those examples that I gave with binding the photo, moving the two lover candles together. Get creative. Think about what different actions can represent. Submerging something in water, dancing, cutting something apart or a photo apart, ripping something apart, sewing two things together. And the great thing is, it doesn't have to make sense to anybody but you. All you have to do is frame it in your mind as this action equals this desired effect. C, timing. If timing applies to your craft, work it in. If you work with days of the week, cycles of the moon, day versus nighttime, Sabbats, times of the day, factor those in when you plan out the timing of when you cast your spell. But again, only if that applies to your craft. D, deity or outside power source. If you wish to call upon a god, a goddess, the fae, your ancestors, spirits, whoever or whatever you happen to call upon and usually make requests of, if you call upon anyone at all, figure out how they work into this. Do you usually put out offerings at the beginning of the spell? Do you want to include an offering in the spell? Do you want to put their name in the wording? Whatever works, again, for your brand of magic. Like I said, I'm trying to keep this pretty general so it applies to everybody. Just whatever way that you summon or manifest that help, work it into your spell. E, words. Some people like to say spells out loud, other people just like to visualize. I like to speak during spells, not always, but usually. Now, some people like to write something out in advance. Sometimes it's rhyming, sometimes it's not. Some people like to read it off a piece of paper. Some people like to memorize it. Some people, like myself, like to just speak from the heart in the moment. Figure out in which part of your action, of all the steps in your spell, is this going to be the most impactful? Is it gonna pack the most punch? If you do plan on writing it out in advance, make sure to do so. F, visualization. Figure out when the best time is to visualize your intention manifesting. It could be from point A to point B, the whole way through all of your steps, you are actively visualizing. It could just be when you're reciting your spell or as you're doing your action. Maybe you're going to visualize different parts of your intention manifesting at different points of your spell on different steps. Factor all that in. G, miscellaneous. Gather anything else you want to use. If you want to factor in a rune or a sigil, maybe carve those into a candle. Maybe you like to burn a specific incense or play a specific song because it just gets you in that witchy mood. Or maybe if there's something that it's a good ingredient, you can't figure out how to use it directly, or you don't like using it directly in your spell, but you do want to have it nearby. Where does it fit in your spell? Is it necessary? And now, like I said, this miscellaneous, it's also sort of to cover anything else that I haven't covered in this template because I'm trying to keep it generalized. Before I wrap up this section, there's one more thing I want to cover, and I mentioned this also in my spell failures video, and that is don't overdo it. Don't feel the need to do all of the actions and incorporate all of the items. Listen to your intuition. Use the items that you've had the most success with, the ones that you keep working with often because they just keep drawing you in. You feel the most connection to them. In the very beginning of my practice, I did try writing spells on my own. None of them worked. But part of the issue was that I felt the need to have one type of incense burning and incorporate one oil somewhere and use at least one type of crystal and at least one type of herb and make sure I had colored paper to write on with colored ink and oh my gosh, everything you can possibly think of incorporating into a spell. I was trying to find a way to incorporate it because I felt like the more correspondences I have, the more powerful this is going to be, which is not always the case. It just ends up being a case of too many cooks in the kitchen. Sometimes the simple spells are the most impactful. There's nothing wrong with having notes on hand for your instructions, but if you have 3 pages of notes with 4 rhyming paragraphs of things for you to say and 18 different steps with, 12 different ingredients, how are you really going to realistically maintain your mental clarity, maintain your grounding, your centering, maintain your focus, your visualization? You're just not going to, and therefore your spell will not be successful despite having all the correspondences. So just don't overdo it. Step number 3 is to do the spell. Now, don't forget all the other steps that includes, and again, this is going to be very particular depending on your personal style of the craft. Do you like to cleanse yourself, cleanse your items, have a ritual bath beforehand, open a circle? You also need to ground and center, raise energy, focus, and alter the mind. Those should all go without saying. You probably have your own habits down in place that you do before every spell. I know I do, but I know sometimes I like to switch things up a bit depending on what the spell is, what I am looking to get out of it. And don't forget to write it all down. Both the spell, every specific little detail, how you did it, what you said, what you used, write it down, but you also especially want to record the results. I have another video on magic journals right up here and down below in the description box that tells you all about why it's super crucial to keep a journal with all of your spells. Remember, this is just a first draft. You can refine it before you perform it, and then of course once you perform it, if you get lackluster results or it just doesn't work at all, you might want to fiddle with it a little bit. Try it again, and if you're a stickler like me, you don't like having any first, second, or third drafts in your actual Book of Shadows, you just want the final, tried and true, 100% legit and successful spell in your Book of Shadows, then just have the journal to write it down in. A notebook is fine. Just don't get lazy, make sure you write it down. I would love to hear about spells that you've come up with on your own, whether they were successes or failures or just had a funny result. Leave those down in the comments below. Hey, if you love my channel and you would love to see your name floating on the screen right now during this outro, please do consider hopping over to Patreon and becoming one of my patrons. That is one of the perks that comes in all 3 tiers listed on there. So, all you have to do is just $3 a month. That's it. Get your name scrolling over here as I'm doing my outro. But the different tiers do have more perks than that, so please head on over to Patreon/Bewitching.Bemused and check it out. The link is down below in the description box. As always, I am on Facebook, Instagram, and you can email me, and I promise I'm getting better at posting on Facebook, and not just videos, but like articles and rituals and memes. I'm really trying to do better, you guys. I'm so bad with social media. Anyway, that is all for today, witches. I will see you all soon, and best of luck with your own spellcrafting endeavors. I hope you had a wonderful Beltane. I'll see you next week.